The wind curled low through the prairie grass, whispering dry secrets to the fence posts. Boone Calder stood at the edge of his land, hands folded over the smooth curve of a shovel handle, his weight heavy on one heel. The sky above him bled into orange and bruised purple. He watched it the way a man watched fire, wary, reverent, and unsure if it meant warmth or ruin. Nothing moved out there, not yet, but something would. His ranch had been quiet for near 2 years. Too quiet for the size of a man like Boone, who was broad-shouldered, round at the belly, and shaped by hard winters and harder gossip. Folks in town said he'd been left at the altar by a mail-order bride too pretty to marry a man who sweated through his Sunday coat. They weren't wrong. Cora May hadn't even stepped inside the house, just dropped her valise by the porch and said, "You smell like lard and cowhide," before catching the same wagon back to town. She'd laughed loud enough for the dust to carry it. Boone hadn't laughed since. So when he saw someone, staggering along the fence line as dusk fell, he didn't believe his eyes at first. It was a figure limping badly, one hand pressed against her ribs, her dress ripped and feet bare. She reached the edge of his property and crumpled like a boned fish, folding inward in a breathless heap right at the very post where Cora May had once turned around. Boone dropped the shovel. The girl was Apache, her skin sun-warmed and streaked with blood, her braid undone and eyes fever-bright even behind the lids. He hesitated, knew full well what it meant to bring a native woman into his house, but something in her stillness struck him deep. She didn't cry, didn't reach for help, just lay there like she'd already done her share of running. He lifted her into his arms, surprised at how light she was. She smelled of sagebrush, dirt, and iron. She didn't wake, not even when he laid her gently on the cot in the back room, not even when he cleaned the dried blood from her temple with an old handkerchief and poured water in her mouth with a careful tilt of the tin cup. The house settled into silence again, as though it had agreed to keep her secret. She stirred 2 days later. Boone was out chopping wood when he heard the clatter inside, the creak of floorboards, a chair tipping. He stepped in the house and found her on her feet, crouched low, a kitchen knife held clumsily in her palm. "I'll leave," she rasped. Boone didn't speak. He set the bucket down by the stove, ladled out some beans into a bowl, and slid it across the table. Then he turned and walked out. The next day, she was still there, and the beans were gone. They didn't speak much. He fixed fence posts. She swept the floor with small, trembling movements, eyes always on the windows. When he handed her a pair of old boots, she took them without a word. He found his shirts neatly folded on the edge of the bed one morning. Her work, quiet, grateful, unwilling to presume. Boone tried not to watch her, but he did. He watched how she flinched at shadows and how she kept the back door unlatched, even at night. He saw the scars under her collar when her dress slipped a little while hauling water. Someone had hurt her bad, and she carried that pain like a bundle on her back, always shifting but never dropped. On the fourth evening, they shared a moment without meaning to. She was standing by the barn as the sun dipped low, staring out at the plains with her arms crossed tight over her chest. Boone approached with 2 apples. She blinked, as if unsure whether to flee, but he just held one out. She took it, her fingers barely grazing his, and for the first time, her lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but something in that direction. Boone chewed slow, his eyes on the pink horizon. "Name's Boone," he said finally. She looked at him for a long while. "Nalina," she said. That was all. In town, stories began to stir. Mrs. Finch spotted the girl hanging laundry and clutched her pearls like they might shield her from scandal. "A savage woman wearing his dead bride's apron," she told the preacher's wife. "Mark my words, nothing good comes of that." Cora May, still sniffing around the saloon for attention, laughed into her whiskey. Well, at least Boone didn't waste the apron. That house always did smell like desperation. Boone heard it all the next supply run. He didn't respond, just paid his bill, packed his flour and coffee, and walked out into the rain. That night, he chopped wood until his hands blistered. Inside, Nalina sat in the corner by the hearth, legs tucked under her. The boots he'd given her sat beside her like silent things. She stared at the floor, but her voice broke the quiet. "I was promised to a judge," she said. "He paid my uncle 3 horses and 2 rifles." Boone didn't move, just watched the fire. "When I said no, they beat me. Said I was lucky. Said I was a gift." He poured her a mug of warm milk and handed it over. Still, he didn't speak. "I killed one of his men," she whispered. "I think." Boone finally spoke. "You're safe here." She looked at him hard. "For how long?" Boone hesitated. Then, simply, "Until you don't need to be." Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, something shifted, quiet as the settling of old dust. She drank the milk. Neither of them saw the shadowed figure on horseback just beyond the hill crest, watching the ranch with eyes like black glass. But they would. The wind that once whispered now howled low and unsettled, skimming over the flat stretch of Boone Calder's ranch with the weight of a coming reckoning. Nalina stood barefoot just inside the barn, her breath fogging in the morning chill, eyes narrowed at the distant ridge where a speck of motion stirred. The rider had been there for half a day, appearing at dawn like a hawk circling slow before a dive. He hadn't come closer, not yet, but neither had he turned away. Boone knew who it was before he raised the binoculars. The posture, the way the stallion held the bit, it was Judge Lennox Grady, the man who bought women like cattle and wore polished boots into tribal camps like they were his parlor. Boone said nothing to Nalina. He just oiled the rifle in silence and set it beside the door as the kettle steamed behind him. She noticed. "It's him," she said flatly. Boone gave a nod, eyes steady, shoulders broad as if carved from the doorframe itself. "Don't go near the windows," he said. "Not today." Grady made his presence known in town first. He tipped his hat to Mrs. Finch and slipped silver into the preacher's palm. Said he was looking for a runaway girl who was promised to a proper man. A savage, he called her, with eyes like poison and a heart full of deceit. He said she was dangerous, that she'd seduced and tricked and fled with secrets that didn't belong to her. Mrs. Finch leaned close, voice syrup-sweet. "I believe she's keeping house for Boone Calder." Then she clasped her Bible to her chest like it could excuse the betrayal. Boone saw Grady riding up the path before noon, black horse high-stepping, dust rising behind each hoofbeat like steam. Boone was waiting on the porch, arms folded, hat low, and heart thudding slow but hard. Nalina sat in the loft above the barn, eyes trained through a crack in the wood. Grady dismounted like a man who never had a knock. His face was smooth and flushed with the heat of entitlement. "Boone Calder," he said, voice too loud for the quiet land, "I believe you've got something that ain't yours." Boone didn't answer. Just let the silence stretch until it ached. Grady stepped closer. "The girl, Apache, stole from me. Ran. She was spoken for. Promised." Boone shifted his weight, but didn't move from the porch. "She's not yours. She's my property. She's not." The judge narrowed his eyes. "Now I know you're still nursing wounds over that fancy mail-order bride. Shame'll twist a man, make him think foolish." Boone's hand drifted to his side, not quite drawing, but enough. "She ain't property. She's a person, and she ain't leaving with you." A moment passed, a heavy, breathless pause where even the birds seemed to hush. Grady's smile cracked. "You gonna kill a white man for a squaw?" Boone's voice was low. "I'll kill a man for riding onto my land uninvited and threatening someone I'm feeding under my roof." The rifle sat behind the door, but Boone didn't reach for it. He didn't need to. His stillness was weapon enough. Grady spat in the dirt, boot grinding it in. "You'll regret this," he said, turning back to his horse. "You think you're her savior, fat man. She'll eat your kindness like bread and poison. Mark me." Boone watched him go, never blinking. In the loft, Nalina wept into her palms, not from fear but something stranger, something deeper. No one had ever stood for her before without needing something in return. That night, the sky cracked open with thunder. Boone sat at the hearth, shirt damp from the rain, watching the flames lick low. Nalina came in from the barn, her braid glistening, a clean bandage on her arm. "You should have let him take me," she said quietly. "He'll be back." "I know. Why risk it?" Boone didn't look at her. "'Cause I got tired of letting people leave without someone trying to stop him." She sat across from him, knees drawn to her chest like a child. "You don't know what I've done. I don't need to." The fire snapped between them. She whispered, "You're not afraid of what I am?" Boone gave a soft, tired breath. "I'm afraid of going another year without anyone else saying goodnight." Silence wrapped around them, tender and thick. She didn't answer, but she didn't move away either. In the morning, Boone found her saddling the old mare, her satchel packed and eyes rimmed with sleep. She didn't cry, just kept her hand steady. "Where you headed?" he asked, voice even. "South, where the ground forgets who walked on it." He stepped forward and took the reins from her fingers. "Ain't nobody whispering out here anymore. Let him talk." She looked up at him, startled. "Why?" Boone shrugged. "They already think the worst. Might as well give him a reason." He led the horse back to the post and looped the reins loosely, as if saying stay without needing to say it. Then he walked inside and set 2 plates at the table instead of 1. She stood there a moment longer, then followed, barefoot and quiet. At supper, she sliced an apple with care, laid a piece on his plate, and said, "You never asked what my name meant." Boone looked up from his stew. "Nalina," she said. "It means she is the one they wait for." He nodded once, slow. "That sounds about right." Outside, the ridge was empty again. But miles away, a rider was already circling back, mouth full of rage and pockets full of names.